From the News Channel 5 Network, this is Morning Line with Nick Barris.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us on Morning Line. Nick Barris here on a Monday. I hope you had a good weekend. Wow, wasn't that weather awesome? Unless you have allergies, and that kind of sucks. But this morning, my head is clear. That's a good thing, and I hope yours are as well. Before you head out today into the 80-degree temperatures, sit back and join in the conversation this morning. We're going to be talking about the issue of homelessness, which we've certainly talked about on this program before. But there are developments on that front with everything from legislation that dictates where someone may be able to stay and sleep on public places as that tries to get more regulated, to what kind of help is out there and the like. And we'll take some of your phone calls. We're going to touch on a variety of bases under the umbrella of homelessness, which is certainly a big issue, not just here in Nashville, but throughout Middle Tennessee. So as always, 737-7587, you're invited to join in the conversation if you'd like. We've got two great guests with us this morning from over at Opentable. Paula Foster, the executive director, right?
Yes.
Nice to have you on. Advocacy and outreach is India Pungarcher. Got that last name right. Thank you both for coming on.
Sure.
Why don't you first, just for our viewers, give them a little bit of a primer on what Opentable is all about. Just let them know in case they're not familiar with it.
Opentable Nashville is a nonprofit organization. We're about 11 years old now, almost 12 years old.
Is that?
Yeah.
Wow, okay, more than a decade.
We started around the flood of 2010 when the flooding happened underneath by the river, and Tent City was flooded, and we had to help folks get out of there. And so Opentable was born. Outreach workers and a group of faith leaders came together and said, we need to take care of our friends. And so we began to do homeless outreach services, where we provide as much life-sustaining support to our friends who are living outdoors as we can, while we try to get them connected to resources by establishing relationships with them. It's not so easy just to say, hey, let me get you into housing when the person doesn't know who you are.
Right.
So building those relationships is key in order to get folks to trust us enough to give us the information that we need to help them get into more stable housing when we can.
Yeah, the key word you say there, I was waiting for you to say, is trust.
Yes.
When you talk about that, you're with Outreach India. So how do you do that? Is it you go into these communities, but I mean, you know, it's someone's home or where they live.
That's right.
You have to, you know, do that delicately like you would with anyone. Just, you know, how do you go about doing that?
Absolutely. Definitely doing it delicately and showing up. You know, sometimes you might have to connect with someone multiple times before, you know, they realize that, you know, you have good intentions and you're going to show up when you say you show up.
Is it that you literally walk into some of these areas where they live and just, if they're out, say hello, introduce yourself? How do you go do that?
Yeah, we always say that our office, you know, it looks like underneath a bridge, on a sidewalk in the woods. We really go to wherever the people are, and we're showing up, and we are, you know, building relationships and letting folks tell us what they need and what they need first. And so we're making sure that folks have the agency and the dignity to, you know, have a say in, you know, how we're going to get them into housing and what kind of housing we're going to get them into.
Is it your experience that once you gain that trust, most of the time they'll be open to help? Because sometimes you hear some say, I don't want any help, I'm happy exactly where I am. And that may be the first thing they say, but if they get the trust, how often do they truly welcome the help?
Yeah, and we always say that I personally have never met anyone who doesn't want to move into housing. One of our previous outreach workers said that, you know, when you meet someone and sometimes they tell you, I don't want housing, this is something I've, you know, chosen for myself, they're doing that because they're trying to protect themselves. You know, a lot of the public, there's a lot of scrutiny and misunderstanding about the experience of homelessness. So why would someone want to tell you, you know, the most terrible 5 things that happened to them in their lives that, you know, cause them to experience homelessness, especially when you're first meeting them.
Yeah, that's really a personal thing for anyone to share. So the trust, and it takes time to develop that, I suppose. Going out and doing what you do then, see, you get to see it firsthand, and the majority of the public, you know, they don't encounter them unless sometimes they happen to be out in some of these public places and you recognize. What do you think about some of the movement being made now to restrict, try to address the issue of where they can live and where they can't?
You know, one of the biggest issues that we have is that we say every day, we do not want people sleeping under bridges. We don't want them sleeping in parks. We don't want them sleeping outside because it's horrible. It's a horrible way to live day after day after day after day. The issue that we have is that there's nowhere to go. So when you say you can't sleep here, where would you like us to have them go? Where would you like to offer them a place to go? There's not enough shelter beds. There's not enough housing. So where do you want them to go? As soon as we have those resources, we will work day and night to try to get folks into those resources and off the streets. But until we have them, there is nothing that we can do.
They're going to have to go somewhere,
right?
Obviously, but you know as well as I do, in terms of having a place for them. I mean, Nashville's real estate market is insane.
Yes.
Okay. How big an issue is that? And that's really come to fruition just over the past few years, where I mean, people who have means can't find a place to live in this city. How big an issue is that? I mean, is that magnified, which was already an existing problem, to a great degree, to a moderate degree? How big a deal is it, the real estate market in Nashville? Oh,
great is not even beginning to describe it. It's astronomical. Lindsay, one of our co-founders, likes to say we're playing musical chairs. We keep taking chairs away. We keep taking housing units away and expecting people to be able to find a place to stay. Where? When you take all those units away to build big developments that then people cannot get back into because they cannot afford it, where do you expect them to go? And it's not just a problem here in Nashville, but we're seeing it exponentially here. It's a problem all over the country. The wealth gap, the inequities between what people have and they don't have is so vast that there is no place for people to be able to go. So
what is a reasonable solution to this in, say, the Nashville area? Okay, reasonable. It's going to take money. It's going, there's going to have to be some property, a building maybe that's not being used, or something that's. What is, in your mind, a reasonable solution? And I know the mayor's talked about it. The city council has said, and I thought in some ham-handed efforts to go look at some of these places without announcing and go traipsing through there. But I mean, what is a reasonable solution?
I'll take it.
Sure. I mean, I think we just need literally as much investment in affordable housing as possible, and also political will. I think there's been a lot of conversation about, we can band together and come up with a dedicated funding stream and some creative funding streams to have a new Titans stadium. And so there's absolutely no reason why, in the state of Tennessee, in Nashville, we can't do something very similar to also make sure that every single person has housing. So that's something we definitely want to see, but we just also haven't had the dollar amounts invested into housing, year after year. And yes, Tennessee makes it difficult, but we also need to have policies in place to protect the affordable housing stock we have. We can't have it be this free market where anyone can come in and buy up these housing stocks. Yes, we have to have, again, the political will and the legislation in place, which is not easy in Tennessee, but to be preserving, because for every unit we secure or convert to affordable housing, we're losing too. So
I think altruistically, all three of us, I mean, I'm with you on this. I want everyone to have a shelter and a comfortable place to live and to be functional. But you're right. You talk about, building a shelter, or if you talk about it to the general constituency, a new stadium for the Titans. You know what the answer is going to be.
Oh, sure. They're going to say that there are, the Titans, all those games, they bring in lots of money. Think about how much money people pay in taxes and in property taxes. And if we were able to actually have people in housing, they would be stable. They could find jobs. They could contribute to the tax base in a way that the Titans never will, because that's a one place, one thing kind of thing. Yes, it's a big boom, big bang for your buck. But stability across the board of people being able to find employment. How can you find employment when you don't have a place to shower every day?
Right, you can't. Or have an address for, return address, paychecks, whatever the like. And you just hit it on the head there. My point was, if you don't give a darn about these folks, maybe you're just selfish that way and you don't care. Addressing it benefits us all.
Right, that is correct.
Is the main thing. Just economically, it just makes for a more functional, and I think everyone contributing to what we have. I mean, it benefits everyone in a big way. Do you look at any other cities that have done, you think, a good job of addressing homelessness that we can model ourselves after?
That's a great question. There is a promising model in Houston that a lot of people are talking about. They're using a housing first approach. So again, it's nothing new. It's things that we know work, where we really just need these steep investments in affordable housing we haven't seen before. And we also need to get people into housing first. And that also includes wraparound services. But no one can, work on their sobriety or work on employment if they don't have a roof over their heads first and foremost. But also not just city, as a country, in the course of a decade, we have grabbed veteran homelessness, and that was specifically because, you know, we had huge millions and millions, hundreds of millions of dollars that we invested into vouchers specifically for veterans. So we know what works. We know vouchers work. Now we're just, you know, creeping into this era where we don't have units to actually put these vouchers to work in.
Right. Okay.
Even veteran homelessness now here in Nashville is becoming more and more difficult, even though we did a great job of being able to invest in that, because people have vouchers in their hands to help subsidize their rent, to get them into housing, to get them stabilized, and there are literally no units of housing to put them into.
Yeah, I did a story probably a month or so ago out of Murfreesboro, and I went out with a woman there who's with the VA who took us around, and she was pointing as we were driving along. That once was ours, it was bought up and is now a bunch of tall skinnies. That was ours, that was ours. They're all disappearing. And really part of what she said the issue is trying to find some landlords that are willing to accept the vouchers and not, and you're asking them to do a lot. Some of them maybe do quite well, but not cash in as they could and still keep some units available for this lower income, you know, population.
You know, the issue is that when you have a free market and someone's going to offer you $800,000 for a property that you own free and clear, and you know you're not living there, it's a rental property. Why wouldn't you sell it?
Yeah,
and do
and I don't bash those people. I mean,
no, I understand
why wouldn't
that,
you? It's tough. It's like, you know, that's their investment, and they have a chance to cash in. It's the American way.
Sure, but the problem is that when municipalities, localities decide that they want to address the issue and come up with policies like inclusionary zoning, like Nashville did several years ago, then the conservative state legislature comes in and says, no, you can't do that because that stifles free market. So we're being hamstrung, honestly, by our legislature, who literally does not understand the issue.
Yeah, you know, it's just free market, and and we have these laws now. Of course, I guess, you know, I don't know. Do you sense the law that's now, you know, restricting anyone camping on the Capitol grounds is going to extend and go beyond and cause problems?
Yeah.
Also,
sorry, it's
okay. A little loaded question there for you, but go ahead.
Think about it. There are not enough shelter beds, so anyone who says they can just go to a shelter just has absolutely no idea what they're talking about, because there are not enough shelter beds. If everyone had to leave the streets, leave the bridges, leave the parks, which we want them to do, but where are they going to go? There are not enough shelter beds. So even if we got all those beds filled, where are the rest of the folks supposed to stay while they're trying to get into shelter or trying to get into housing if they can't lay their head down in a park or anywhere? Because that's what this bill is doing. If you lay down and go to sleep anywhere, you could be arrested. So where do you want them to go?
Yeah, and you can't put them all in jail, because you do that anyway. It would be wrong. But two, I don't want to pay for all of them to be behind bars.
That's more costly.
A different way. It's more costly. Yeah, the sheriff will tell you that. Listen, we'll take a break. We can take some phone calls with folks with thoughts on that. 737-7587. Much more of our conversation on this and where we go. And again, we've done this program before, but we're going to cover some new ground, I think, as well. And I'd be curious what some of your attitudes are with our guests right after this. Stay with us.